In business, it's really important to know the customer relationship or whether it's executive to executive. And you find out a lot about a person playing with them on the golf course. A lot of people would say, you're just chasing a little white ball around, but effectively, there's a tremendous amount of etiquette and competitiveness, or even if you're just not even playing for anything, it's still, a relationship situation as you traverse the golf course with either a customer or a business associate.
There are opportunities for our work and careers everywhere, if you know where to look. That's easier said than done, especially in our fast-paced and constantly changing world. Marianne Faremouth is talking to experts, employers, and job seekers to bring you insight and understanding about what's possible. This is Career Can Do, where we're navigating the new work world.
Welcome to the Career Can Do podcast, a top global podcast dedicated to helping you navigate the new work world. My name is Chris Sandland, and I'll be the host for today's episode. Today, I have the pleasure of sitting down with Joe Bronson. He is the CEO of the Bronson Group, a longtime financial and operational consultant in the high-tech and semiconductor industry, and the author of the upcoming book, Par Than Me, 50 Years of Golf, One Hole at a Time. Also includes a foreword by NFL legend Steve Young. Joe, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Chris.
You bring a very unique perspective that blends business strategy, leadership lessons, and the game of golf. Over the past 5 decades, I see here that you've played 93 of the top 100 U.S. courses. Many people would say that as a bucket list dream activity. You're almost well on your way to seeing all of them, which is really cool. So my first question to you is, what has been your favorite course and why?
Well, my favorite course is a new one. It's, in fact, the cover of the book. It's North Berwick in Scotland. So it's not one of the 93.
And what about that course is so memorable for you?
The thing I like about North Berwick is the variety of the course. And plus, I like Linksland golf, which is, golf near the sea. And North Berwick has a wide variety of different types of challenges. It's very fun to play. The third hole has a wall in the middle of the fairway, which is about 4.5 feet, 5 feet high, which you've got to navigate, even though it doesn't seem that much of a challenge, but it's a wall. And it's really funny. And there's another wall on the backside as well near the green, which is a little more interesting to traverse. But a whole number of different ideas, including Biarritz type hole, par 3, I think it's number 15, number 14, 240-yard par 3. And when you play it in the wind, it's pretty cool, pretty tough.
Wow, that might be the longest par 3 I've heard. That's quite the distance, 240 yards. Joe, you do a lot of parallels between business and golf, obviously. And so hearing you talk about some of the complexities of the golf course is kind of very interesting and has a lot of parallels to business. And so just to talk about that a little bit, a surprising number of people will say that golf is the ultimate networking tool. And it's also a common motif, I think, here in the States that business is done on the golf course. At least it used to be that way. When we're in a world today where we're leaning into Zoom and LinkedIn and a lot more virtual interactions, do we still think that motif holds true? And if so, do we think in-person experiences like golf are as valuable as they once were, or are we changing with the times?
Well, my opinion would be is that golf is a very good networking tool, and I think holds its relevance even more so today than in the past, particularly coming out of the pandemic where we were sequestered without doing much of anything. I think golf was one of the first things that erupted, from the pandemic. But getting back to your question, I think that, in business, it's really important to know the customer relationship or whether it's executive to executive. And you find out a lot about a person playing with them on the golf course. A lot of people would say, you're just chasing a little white ball around, but effectively, there's a tremendous amount of etiquette and competitiveness, or even if you're just not even playing for anything, it's still, a relationship situation as you traverse the golf course with either a customer or a business associate.
Joe, you spent 5 decades in the workforce, and your background is, I will say, quite frankly, extremely impressive. You have lots of three-letter titles in your history, which many people, spend their whole life trying to get that one time, and I feel like you've done that many times over. So, in your career and in your experience, how has the new work world shifted your perspective on leadership, and how has golf helped you adapt to many of the changes that you've seen in your career?
Well, I think you start with a value system, I think is important. And golf, if you do it properly, it requires ethics, it requires manners, it also requires self-discipline and, emotions. In fact, in one of the books, I don't think it's this one. Well, actually, I do a little bit. Emotion is not a great place for golf. I point out in one of the pieces, emotion might be a good thing for football or even in basketball. And golf, it'll ruin you. The more emotional you get, the worse things get. You have to keep everything in perspective and in balance because my opinion is that golf is more mental than physical. And a lot of people don't get that. But what you're trying to accomplish and what your plan and what your execution capability is on the golf course really requires a lot of thinking and forethought, which obviously applies right over to the world of business as you're making decisions and things of that sort. And certainly in business, there's not a lot of room for emotional outbursts and things of that sort.
And I think it's important for people to realize, especially in golf and in business, you make a decision, it doesn't turn out the way you want, you're upset, there's emotions that come into play, but the decision has been made. Where you are right now is where you are. It doesn't matter where you've been. You have a decision in front of you to make, an objective to achieve, a strategy you need to go after, and don't let past decisions, past circumstances try to dictate where you need to go next and how you're going to, recover from where you are. You just need to take sight and take inventory of what's the situation. What do we need to do to best proceed forward and make the most out of where we are? What's happened to get us to this point is kind of irrelevant. We now need to look forward and be more forward thinking.
Yeah, you have to react to the situation that's in front of you. So you'll see a lot of times, particularly if you watch a lot of professional golf, you'll see guys start to fall apart when they might miss a putt they should have made, and it kind of carries over to the next tee shot, and all of a sudden we're losing it, right? So you have to be aware of that, and you have to compress and repurpose, what you're doing to recover. And you'll find also a lot of good golfers, a lot of champions basically come back from things like that. As you could see, I mean, just what Rory McIlroy did in the Masters, some of the best shots I have ever seen, hit in my life, offset by some of the worst shots I've ever seen, in championship play. It's amazing, right? Just that skill level is just amazing.
Yeah. I know here that you've played with Arnold Palmer, and I mean, most people in this world have not played with Arnold Palmer. So I first want to know, how did that even happen? And I'm sure during that round, you took every opportunity to pick that man's brain because that's kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity. So curious, how did it go? And what did you learn after playing with him?
Well, it was a very unusual situation. First of all, being in the position that I was in my company, I was the only executive of the top executives that played golf. So I got all the invites. And it turned out that I thought I was headed to Pebble Beach, and I thought I was going to play a corporate type event with Tom Siebel, who's a very senior and well-known executive in the Bay Area. And I thought I was going to play one or two holes with Arnold Palmer, and there'd be a bunch of other executives there as well. But I checked into the Pebble Beach Pro Shop, and the pro behind the counter said to me, "Well, Mr. Palmer's waiting for you down at the driving range," which I thought was slightly unusual. So I went down there, and there he was with Tom, and that was it. It was just us and one other guy. And he couldn't have been nicer. He gave me the famous umbrella pin, and we proceeded to move and hit a few balls. And then the weather turned ugly, which is very unusual for Pebble Beach in May. It was, I think it was the first or second week in May. And it's actually started to rain, really ominous. So we couldn't play. And so we went to the gallery restaurant. The gallery restaurant is right at the first hole of Pebble Beach, elevated. So you walk in from the street. We walked in, sat down, and within 5 minutes, the entire place realized who was in the shop, and they all came over and asked for pictures and autographs, etc. And he just signed them all. Couldn't have been nicer to everybody. It was just kind of amazing. And then the skies cleared, and we were told that we could go down and play. And you, as you leave the gallery restaurant, you walk down the stairs to the first tee. And I opened the door, and there was 750 people by the first tee at least, because apparently somebody had said that Arnold Palmer was around. And all of a sudden, it looked like the first tee at the AT&T event, which was really amazing. And
oh my goodness.
we were the only people on the golf course. They closed the course for the four of us. You know, Palmer flips me the ball and says, "Show us where to go," which was very interesting. But fortunately, I was able to slap it down the middle, and off we went. It was just a fabulous day of storytelling, and as you could see, how he was able to. Here's a guy that was a champion, best in his field, an icon, and treated us just like normal. He couldn't have been nicer. Shared a lot of stories. It was a great walk through that golf course, and particularly to play it without waiting for anybody or doing anything. It was just wonderful. They had a photographer follow us, so I've got a wonderful, probably 100 photographs of the event. So I put that. I wrote an article for the book about that occasion, but he just was fabulous. Tremendous stories. Nothing about playing the game. We just played the game. No instructions, just wanted to pour into what kind of people we were and what we were about, and some really cool stories about life on the tour.
Joe, in your view, what do you think made Arnold so great? I mean, you've played a lot of golf yourself. You've probably played with a lot of people. If you were to say, how would you compare Arnold's game to anybody else's game? What do you think made him so incredible?
He was a tremendous competitor. I mean, I watched him as a boy and as a champion, but he was a tremendous competitor. But the other thing was he loved the game so much that he attracted, you remember, you're too young to know about the concept of Arnie's Army. He was, a magnet to fans. And so he was the fan favorite. While he really didn't do anything other than play good competitive golf, but he was always there for the fans and respected the game, respected all aspects of the game, and respected all of those that were in it, whether they be caddies, competitors, officials, heads of golf societies, etc., writers, the press. He was very accessible and displayed a kind of an attitude that was, there were no chinks in the armor. I mean, we could talk about Tiger or Jack or a bunch of other people, and they're great, but they all had their little quirks, in my opinion. They didn't have the 100% kind of following that I think Arnie had in his career. And those guys were better lifetime players given their records, etc. But for the love of the game and his ability to relate to people, I've never seen anything like it.
Do you think the way that he was towards you during that game, being so open and just a joy to be around, do you think you gained more from that round than having, say, played with somebody like Tiger Woods, where maybe the attitudes or the personality would be different? In my experience, obviously there are leaders out there who have achieved incredible things and they have their ways, and you learn tremendous amounts from them. But sometimes I feel when you're working with leaders who are just so wonderful and graceful and open and provide that positive demeanor, while they may not be the most elite competitor, granted Arnie was and is a tremendous golfer, do you feel like that made it a better round for you and you gained more from that than, say, having played with a different type of person?
I've played in probably 50 pro-ams at least. So I've played with a lot of professionals over my time. There was nothing like this, in my opinion. And I played with a lot of what I would consider really good, great professional players. The only guy that I think comes a little bit close to Arnie is Gary Player, but it was just a consistent, this is Joe, this is Tom, we're just here, we're having a good time, we're hitting the ball, we're hitting it pretty good, let's just keep going. And it was that kind of thing. There was no pretension. It's not like I'm Arnold and you're not kind of thing. And you didn't feel intimidated. I never did play. I was supposed to play one time with Tiger, but I didn't get that chance. He had to back out for some reason. And I think I would have been intimidated playing with him. I mean, I don't know him at all. And some of the other professionals, they square in between. Some were really great, some were okay, and there were a few that I would choose not to.
Okay, Joe, I want to change things up a little bit. I have a quick scenario for you. Are you ready? We'll test your golf game. So we've got a par four, dog leg left, water's on the left. You can play it safe. You can hit it down the fairway. You'll be on the green probably in 3 easily, no problem. Or you can set your sights to the hole, hit the ball over the water, maybe even drive the green. What are you going to do?
What you have to do is you have to assess your own skill set. And I would say, based on that, of course, it would change, over the years, but I would say that I would take a risk-free approach, knock the ball in the fairway, and try to get on in 3 and 2 putt or 1 putt, etc. I would do that because it's what I do. It's within my skill set. I don't believe, this is just me. There's a lot of different players who do other things. People like to take risks, some of them, even if they're really good players. I don't think you should do that because I'm not interested in making 7s and 8s. And so I'll defer to the easier route where I can increase my percentages of success. I'll give you one really good story about that risk-taking approach. I was playing Whistling Straits, which is a wonderful venue in Wisconsin. And we get to the 18th hole, and I have a caddy. And it's a par 5, and I'm going to hit the ball down the middle, and I'm going to hit my second shot, in a certain place to the right, et cetera. And my caddy thought I was really too conservative. And he told me, look, stop, we really want you to take a shot. So instead of hitting, say, a second shot, 5-iron to give me 100 yards, he says, I want you to go for the green. Here, take this, you got it. Because there was nothing but trouble, if you missed it right or left. And it turned out to be a good move. Unusual for me, but I thought it was interesting. Without the caddy, I would have never done it.
That is very interesting because that's the point that I wanted to discuss is, in business, you will have opportunities of risk and reward, right? You'll see an opportunity, a transaction, a deal that you can go do. Maybe it's outside of your comfort zone, outside of your core competencies. But man, if you were to really knock it out and do your best, perhaps it would set you up in this amazing position that otherwise you wouldn't have done. And so we're constantly trying to battle with that. We've got the good guy, bad guy on our shoulders telling us, you can't do it. Just stay within your comfort zone, stay within your competencies, do what you know best. And then you've got that caddy on the other shoulder saying, hey, I've seen you all week. I've seen you all day. You're hitting it crazy. There's no way you're going to miss this shot. You have to take it. And so I think, leaders out there probably struggle with that type of mentality all the time, trying to figure out, do I stay the course or do I perhaps go outside of my competencies and my comfort zone and go for the green?
Yeah, let me give you a funny story about that. I'll try to go as quickly as I can. Cypress Point, 16th hole, one of the most famous par 3s in the world, 240 yards over the Pacific Ocean. You have to carry the Pacific Ocean to get on the green. Okay, there is a bailout area where you could hit, say, a 5-iron, 170 yards, but then you'll have about, a 70 or 80-yard pitch shot to the green in order to try to make par. Of course, that's kind of a chicken way out. So I took a driver and I knocked the ball over the green down to the beach. And it's a drop of, say, about 60 feet, 70 feet down. And so, I'm going to probably take a drop and make a double bogey or whatever. My caddy runs down to the beach and it's low tide. The ball's sitting up, on the beach sand, and he proceeds to tell me, we're going to hit this. And I said, you got to be crazy. I mean, there's a 60-foot wall in front of me. He said, no problem. Just take your sand wedge and hit the ball. Don't take any sand. And he runs up because you can't even see
Can't see the pin from where the ball is. Yeah.
And he runs up and he says, just hit it over my head. And I'm saying, no, really, you got to be kidding me. And I knocked it over his head to about a foot. And I said to him, you could have given me another 100 balls and I would have hit the wall 99 times in a row. It was a minor miracle. But you talk about taking risk and taking advice, that was really interesting.
Joe, was this the same caddy that gave you the advice on the other hole?
No, that was the Cypress Point's and a mile from my house in California. The Whistling Straits is in Wisconsin.
Wow. So on two separate occasions, two separate caddies saw your ability in where you might have made a different decision on your own. Somebody else outside was able to assess your competencies and your skills and say, Joe, I think you've got this. You had the wherewithal to say, you know what, I'm going to take this person's advice and see what happens. What's the worst that can happen? I hit the wall. I'm already on the beach.
Exactly. The thing is, though, that caddy, when he says that, he injects a whole bunch of confidence in what you're doing. I mean, it's not like, maybe the shot was lucky, but it was calculated and it was executed. There was something in there that told him that I could execute that kind of a shot.
Yeah. So I think it's important that in any tough situation, you seek counsel of others because perhaps,
Exactly.
you yourself would say, this is not something I can do, or this is not.
I have a couple of business situations that would have paralleled that from a business standpoint, where I took some advice that ordinarily I may not have taken, and it turned out to be the right call.
Joe, I understand that your book is due out, I think this month, or is it already on
Well, it came
shelves?
out today.
Awesome. Congratulations. I hear all the proceeds are going to go to youth golf and university. Talk about that. Why did you make the choice to give back specifically to these causes, and what do they mean to you?
First of all, I love playing. I'm affiliated with a number of universities. I've been on boards of trustees, board of regents, et cetera. And somehow I got affiliated with golf teams of some of these schools. And when I look at the character and what they're doing with these kids, it's just something you want to support. And not only you're doing that, but you're supporting amateur golf, which I think is really, really important. The development of these kids as the next generation is really important to the society. So my wife and I, we tend to spend most of our contribution dollars, contributing to these kinds of things, as well as, scholarships for kids to attend school. I also donate to the First Tee. I don't know if you're familiar with the First Tee, but they take underprivileged kids that could never afford to play golf or learn how to play golf, and it teaches them how to play golf, but also provides a lot of life lessons in the process. So it's an excellent nationwide organization. We tend to contribute to the chapters in San Francisco and San Jose, California. Yeah, the idea is to get additional funds for these school programs. Golf isn't the most popular sport in a university setting, particularly in today's situation, but the amateur game at the collegiate level is very vibrant, and it's really stocking the PGA Tour with some really, really good kids. And the other thing I like, as a result, they allow me to play with them, which is actually really cool. As they whistle at 330 yards past, they're all killing it. But I can keep up with them, and as long as I can keep up with them, one of the kids remarked to me one time, which is the best compliment I've ever received. They said to me, "Mr. Bronson, we hope we can play as well as you do when we hit 75."
Wow. I can't stress enough, Joe, your contributions in bringing up the next generation. It's huge. What you're doing for young talent to take care of this sport that, you and I both play and love so dearly is critical, and to pass that knowledge and wisdom that you've gained in your career on the golf course and in business to the next generation, I think is super vital and super critical. So hats off to you for doing that. And I think that's a great mission for this book to be used to help further that cause. Joe, I want to wrap us up. We're getting close to the end. We usually like to let our listeners have two key takeaways that they can think about on their drive home or as they're listening to the podcast. So from the listener's perspective, what are two big things that you want to make sure our listeners hear about your life and experiences on and off the golf course?
Well, I would say one thing is that golf is a sport that is very much like life and mirrors life. And for my money, it's a sport that is vibrant and is very important in today's society. We need the values that come out of the game. And I think that's extremely important. And the other thing, amateur golf is really a key thing because it promotes key things such as ethics, integrity, and risk taking and emotional well being. My daughter in law is a yoga teacher, and I tell her, while I'm not personally into yoga, I said, golf is my yoga.
Joe, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge and wisdom. If you're ever in Houston, please look me up because I would love to do a round of golf with you and just to see what those other kids have seen. Because I mean, I'm always a student of the game and always looking to help improve. And just to hear your stories and your long, extremely impressive career would just be amazing just to listen to, fly on the wall, so to speak. But before we go, I just want to make sure our listeners know how to find you. Where can they find you?
Best way to find me is on my website. And you can do that by just clicking on josephbronson.com, all lowercase, and you'll see the website and you'll see the books and you'll see the weekly blog post, which I'm about to publish this week. I'm actually, in reference to this podcast, I actually wrote a piece on customer golf. So to be timely with the subject of this podcast.
Well, Joe, thank you so much. That wraps up another great episode of Career Can Do podcast. We'll see you on the next one.
We thank you for tuning in to our Career Can Do podcast. We make no guarantees on results for your particular quest, but we hope you enjoy the information presented. The views and opinions expressed in this program are solely that of the guest or speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of Marianne Faremouth and Faremouth Company. Thank you.